All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and everybody on Zoom. All right. My name is Rodrigo Lopez. I'm one of the spring faculty affiliates for the CTA this semester. Thank you, Constantine. Thank you, Adi, for that honor. Today, we're going to go over some really cool techniques that I use in my classes to help students better retain material, especially as I teach normally introduction to Spanish classes when we're just bombarded with so much information that we need to memorize. And that information becomes vital as we progress throughout the semester. Now, the way that I'm going to be introducing the three principles that I'm going to be disclosing today, I'm gonna show you examples like we were joking at the beginning, right, for my Spanish class. But don't worry, you can extrapolate all that in a really simple way, regardless of the level of classes that you're teaching. 3,000, 4, maybe we have some seminars also in people attending the Zoom classes, the Zoom session. And again, hopefully after that, if I have time, I would like to show you a really cool example that I have about one particular class and how I basically, with that example, incorporate all three principles into one big assignment. So I'm going to start with the first thing, and that is going to be a little bit of, again, the idea that you should be having or you should go through to that. We're going to go a little bit about how the brain learns. Why do we tend to sometimes see students forgetting really important topics? And then I'm going to go over those principles that are going to be helpful for you, okay, to help to make sure that those students and why you're trying to make them learn it actually sticks and it stays there forever, or hopefully with that idea, right? And again, the examples that I'm going to cover are pretty straightforward in this presentation. And then hopefully, again, at the end, I have enough time to go over one specific for my class. So regardless of what you teach, you can extrapolate all of this. So as we're starting over here, the presentation, uh, all of us as professors, as faculty, know that there's going to be topics that are going to be more complicated than the other ones, correct? And those ones in particular are the ones that I always tried when I'm reflecting about the beginning of the semester. This is a topic that I know students tend to struggle. What was the thing that I did last semester or that I have been doing, right? To make those students, right, that later on they will still remember that, correct? And the most common thing that I see is that when I see a student later on in the semester and I ask him a question about a specific topic, correct? Is like, well, Mr. Lopez, I remember this because you make the connection about this funny cat that you had in your Mentimeter presentation, and then you mentioned that the cat was driving, so conducir, and then and then I reflect upon why is the student retaining that information, and it's basically again for some of those principles that basically just your brain needs in order to learn, right? So we're gonna be disclosing all these three ideas that for me I think are fundamental in the classroom, and that is going to be the attention of the students, the meaning of what we're teaching, and of course, for them to be able at the end to retrieve that information, okay, when they need it, correct? Now, as we start over here, I believe that the most complicated part, one of the most complicated parts and aspects that we have here in the classroom for us is the attention span, all right? And it's just with TikTok and Snapchat and all, we cannot change that anymore. It's just a part of how basically kids are now in the way that they interact with the world and just a part of their lives. So instead of like you need to stop using your cell phone so much, right? It's like, how do we cater to that, right? So instead of me telling to Constantine, drop your phone, Constantine, exactly, it's like, how do I cater to the 5 seconds that Constantine is actually gonna be paying attention to me, right? So that is basically the whole idea. And of course, Constantine, I'm joking because you're my friend. Well, I consider you my friend, so not because you were actually in your cell phone, all right? So let's go start, right, with those attention. And sometimes, for example, see, those of you that attended the kickoff, so this is a genealogy presentation. And again, hopefully at the end, I think I'm sure I'm going to have some time and we can go over more in detail about that. But even simple stuff like this one, like having like, instead of my voice, having something else, or again, like the gifs or the pictures, it seems so silly and it seems like there's no room for that in like in the university level, especially such a, you know, premier institution like SMU, but it really makes that connection with the students, and I believe that it's really important. So with this attention, see, principle, it, everything is about how much time can I have their attention, correct? And a great example is, the doc from, it's like he's like so into this guy, and then in one moment when the squirrel goes, it's like so it's sometimes you need to think about that. When a student gets distracted, it's sometimes not even because he wants to be rude or he doesn't like you as a professor. It's just because in the way that we have gone over basically their lives with cell phones and with technology, is hard to concentrate for long periods of time. For example, when I took the quality metrics for online teaching, one of the main things was, and this was not only for undergrad, they were for graduate seminars when people will PhDs. And I remember when I was in grad school, I would have 3 hour long seminars, and it was just lecture and lecture. But again, instead of like how it was in the past, like how we're gonna adapt to this as we see it now, right? So if again, if they're not paying attention, learning is impossible. It's just that simple. So again, if the attention fades quickly, then how do we again make sure that they have our attention? That is the question, they how to get into that, right? So for me, and again, we're gonna go over one lesson that I have quickly prepared here, is that short explanations are key for this. So I will still have the same amount of time that I will normally spend explaining a concept, but I will break it into different sections. And with that, see, I have short explanations, but again, the goal is still the same. It's not like, oh, I'm teaching the pretérito, I'm gonna just say that is the past and leave it there. No, no. I still go over everything that they need to know about the pretérito. So then when they talk about imperfecto and then pretérito, so they're successful. But again, I break what it will be a 20-minute lecture, correct, into just segments and explain in quick explanations, short answers to their questions. And the way that I do that, for example, see, is we start something like this, correct? We're starting the class, think about your warm-ups, correct? 3 sentences. Ayer llovió todo el día, cuando era niño jugaba al fútbol, de repente empezó a nevar. Which sentence describes a complete action, right? So think about that. See, reflect upon these sentences. Sometimes what I love to do is I always pair them in pairs, right? With your classmates, see, Alison, Constantine, what you think, see, which is the complete action, etc., etc. Then we move to the next one over here, see? And now we have something like this, see? How do I engage the students with this? And this is where technology, that again, for my classes are vital, okay? Because again, it's a way that I keep my students engaged and entertained in the class. There's nothing wrong with PowerPoints, okay? I use PowerPoints, but this is when Genially, Mentimeter, that's why they're a big success in my classes, correct? Now, a simple hands up. Sometimes I don't use technology all the time. I do use PowerPoint sometimes, right, Monica? But sometimes it's just like, Monica, or who wants, why was exactly, right? So the brain stays alert because students know that even though there was no, they know that something has to be done immediately. So it's not only which is the phrase, but then again, there's going to be the feedback, there's going to be questions, there's going to be a participation, correct? So with the raising the hand, I love that. But with Genially Mentimeter, for example, see, I get the whole classroom to interact at the same time, and I get immediate feedback. So again, take a look at the spring kickoff like Genially, and hopefully you join me in April when I introduce Mentimeter, and again, how you can have that immediate feedback through this software that we have, right? Now, after this, ideas, quick ideas. Well, the pretérito, one of the many uses is the complete action, while the perfecto is background or ongoing action. So short explanations so they don't get overwhelmed. Instead of showing them like the textbook and like old school of way that we will teach, right? Here is like all the uses and the rules, and this is all the examples, correct? That again does make sense, but it's too overwhelming. It's especially when you meet them with them Monday to Friday, and we're in the third month of the semester and they're ready to go to summer vacation. You need to make that effort to keep them still into the class, correct? So after this we go from the most mechanical to the more interesting part, when now, okay, it's not only filling the blank, it's start writing sentences, finish sentences, and then again this frequent action just resets the attention, because we were doing this, then okay, that was your question, now we're doing this other stuff, correct? And instead of being like these 20 activities, correct, these 20 fill in the blanks is different parts, different elements, and again resets the attention and keeps the students engaged. Now, I've been successful with this type of really complex topics by breaking this in these parts, because again, I have their attention the whole 20 minutes. So if I was trying to, we're going to explain the topic, right, or the concept, or I'm just going to assume that you know it, and then for 20 minutes, you're just going to be doing this, and everybody has no idea what is happening, correct? Instead, in these 20 minutes, I'm able to practice, answer questions, and introduce the topic that it was maybe more complicated, correct? Now, by switching between different activities, raise your hand, fill in the blank here, go to your Mentimeter, correct? This again refreshes the focus. So the active process of the lecture versus just like, oh, I'm just sitting there listening to blah, 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 all these rules about the pretérito, see? So this aligns my instruction in just how the brain normally is able to pay attention. So now, as we move on here to my second principle, I want to refer to meaning, correct? And for me, something fundamental that, and that's why the reason that I love, teaching language, but just in general, is that in order for you to recall stuff, it has to have certain meaning for you, correct? So like I was mentioning at the beginning, sometimes I see a student and I'm like, like, ¿cómo estás? ¿Condujiste? ¿Qué hiciste hoy? And then, oh, conduje a la universidad, right? I drove. And then, how do you remember conducir? Like, doesn't make any sense. Well, remember the car that he was driving, like I was mentioned, right? So again, and there's so many ways that you can put, again, knowledge with meaning. So if you just tell them like this is important because, well, it's going to be in the exam, they're going to learn it for the exam, hopefully, right? But after the exam is done, they're going to forget it forever, most likely. So we connect prior knowledge, see, especially for my classes, that is fundamental, because learning a language is a ladder. You take the step and then you take the next one. And then again, I also try to make that information relevant or something that connects to their own previous, background and their emotions. And again, this plays a bigger picture when they're learning in my classes. So for example here, vocab. So this is a great example of meaning with vocab. So instead of me going over las celebraciones and talk about feliz cumpleaños, no, it's okay. So English and Spanish, right? Birthday, music. What are just some concepts that you previously heard about it in music, in classes, etc.? And then we brainstorming vocab. And then we go and you look at your activities, right? And your vocab that you need to know. And you notice you already know like 50% of like what is supposed to be new vocab, right? As we brainstorm and we start making those connections. So instead of mechanical, repetitive actions with vocab, your birthday party, correct? Let's recall your birthday party that you had last weekend or last month or last year, correct? And now the vocab appears in a story, and more importantly, their own story. It's not like, here is the example of this paragraph from the BHL. No, it's like you create a story that is your party, and all that vocab that is supposed to be new is part of your story. It's not a list of just terms and everything. So the students are able to have the knowledge with meaning, and it's easier to just be and learn. See, one of the other things over here is to create again those personal connections. So, en mi cumpleaños siempre, which is basically just the translation for I had a moment ago. See, The brain remembers information that relates to the self. So when they're able to connect that vocab, for example, las fiestas, think about la comida. For my introduction to classes, it's really easy to make those connections with your own personal life because it's things that you do all the time. But there's anything, okay, regardless of the class that you're teaching, that you can make these connections or make them for the future. For example, I remember when I was in Mexico and I was in my Spanish classes, and I would be like, why am I studying Spanish if I speak right? Is that I was one of those teenagers, and then look at that. Like I end up being a Spanish professor. Like, anyways, right? So I remember like the conjugate, the accent mark, the accentuation of words, just like I don't know, in my Zoom, I have a lot of here colleagues of mine in the face-to-face classroom. But don't worry if you don't like accent marks. We tend to not like accent marks. Okay, at least when I was a kid, I didn't like accent marks. So I remember the professor and all the explanations, all the rules, and all the colors and everything to try to explain when to use an accent mark, esdrújula, sobre all that stuff. The one that I remember the most, okay, it was the typically, especially for kids, like you know pingüino, right? And then we're all clapping in the, and then maleta, and why do I remember that? Not only because it was a fun activity to do throughout the class, but because the day of the exam, it was always somebody that, right? It's like interrupting. So it creates that connection that now that is just it's been what 14 years ago, and I still remember that professor in that situation. So that knowledge, it just never goes away because I'm able to create that connection to my own personal experience. Correct. Now, for example, I was recalling when I was at UNT and I got to teach an advanced class, and the class was about poetry. And it was just really reading some poetry. And I had a good class, but I was like, we were reading poems from the 18th century, which I love, but I would be like, how do I make my students get engaged with poetry from the 18th century, right? Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, or et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, okay, today, and before we will talk about the poem or the piece of poetry or etc. See, I would be like, you're gonna go to your house, right? And you're gonna be like with your significant other, or if you don't have a significant other, that person that you like or you want to impress, and you're gonna be like, you have no idea what I learned today in my poem class in Professor Lopez class. So exactly, and then we will go over some of the poems. It's like, how do I make everybody always, love is an international, and it's a timeless topic. So as you looking, see, and you reflecting upon your own teachings and whatever topic you teach here at SMU, there's always connections. You as the professional in your area, you can make these connections so students can relate to these topics. Now, over here, for example, this cultural framing, for me, play, and that is why culture in our classes is so important, is because in this case, the culture gives language a reason to, of course, to exist. So one of the easy topics, and I just mentioned this topic because I was just talking about this, is that we compare again the markets, see, in the United States and the markets in Spanish-speaking countries, and how the difference it is. And then again, once we make those cultural connections and they start seeing their own culture connected to other ones, and that is again when this language basically comes to life. And it's the same thing, how you can be able to connect a class. I don't know, you're teaching chemistry, correct? How you're able to connect it to something, okay, that they're gonna be able to recall easily because of their own experiences. And there's always something that you can find if you think up a little bit outside of the box. So again, this meaning strengthens the memory encoding. See, prior knowledge creates neural connections, and of course, this emotional/cultural relevance makes you like, okay, this is why it's important. It's not only for my exam, but I'm gonna be a better person because I know this, correct? And knowledge learning context is remembered longer instead of just random lists of terminology or just ideas. Now, for the last principle over here that I have, I think this is one of the most complex, right? And basically what we have is that we're trying to get into the last part of the learning experience in the classroom. We want students to be able to retrieve the information that we teach them in the classroom. Yes, of course, for the exam, as we do assignments, but more importantly, after they are done with us at SMU or in our classes, etc. Correct? Now, for me, more than getting an A in the exam, for me is when I see the students after the semester is done and they're talking to me in Spanish, and that is really for me the connection, correct? Because again, those students throughout the class, now that they're not with me anymore, that they're not doing BHL, they're not doing homework anymore, they're still able to retrieve that information. Why? Because of everything that we did in the classroom through the semester. Now, some of the ways that I do this is again, some ideas connecting all the principles together. So, for example, write everything you remember about the pretérito, see? So no notes, no pressure, and just basically doing a small warm-up as here as we do in the preps and the practice from the classroom and, of course, from the homework. After that, we go back again to the low-stake questions, correct? So this is the genealogy, the Mentimeter, see, who has the answer for this, see? Which tense could be used here, etc. See, and here I just have some funny examples, but this will be, I would be like, I don't know, put a picture of, like the cat, driving or something like that. It's like, so conducía or and again, nothing is not the exam, is not, if they make a mistake, it is fine, nothing's gonna happen. And then of course, as we do in the lesson, as we progress with some of the activities, see, again, how do we form tener in the pretérito? Students are able almost immediately to do those conjugations that are supposed to be really complicated. For us, tener in the pretérito es el verbo irregular, that is really hard for them to like, exactamente. So once I start, everything starts making sense and playing a whole a circle around, and they're able to again be able to retrieve that information. And the way that I like to finish my classes is again with something simpler, like you want to call it an exit ticket or what, just review or everything, a summary, a conclusion of everything that we did in class, right? It's again in one sentence. What is the pretérito? And again, explain that why you choose that in that one sentence. So retrieval plus reflection is again creates a stronger learning and just a better retaining of the information.
I have a question from Zoom.
Yes.
Alicia asked, can Genially and Mentimeter be integrated in Keynote? And let me see, I'm not familiar with these programs. And do you use it in addition or as a part of your presentation?
Yes, so Mentimeter and Geniality can be used in in a keynote presentation.
Oh, no, Keynote is it's basically PowerPoint for Mac.
Oh yes, you're talking about actually the keynote app, exactly. Yes, I believe. I know that I know that Mentimeter does. Genealogy, I think should be the same. Exactly, yeah. But that's a good question. Exactly, maybe for tech support. For yeah. Now, when it comes to the integration of Genially and Mentimeter so for example, right now this is Genially. So everything that you're seeing over here, this is a Genially presentation, correct? So if it can be introduced to Keynote, I'm pretty sure it can, but unless you really want to use the Keynote, it's like Genially can stand by itself. Like you really don't need to integrate to Keynote. Now, what I think what it would be more helpful is that if you have Keynote presentations, they can be adapted, they can be sent to Genially and Mentimeter. Just like you have your PowerPoints, you can send them to Gen, and then it transfers and it creates this, more engaging, interactive presentations. Again, I don't want to go too much into Genial because again, I have those ones already discussed them, or we're gonna discuss them in previous in next future presentations. But that would be that. Now, when it comes to, I always use Genially Mentimeter most of the times, but that doesn't, like I mentioned, there's nothing wrong with a PowerPoint. Sometimes I do have a PowerPoint in my class, correct? And again, right now, yes, I'm gonna have enough time. So for example, today for my presentation, the whole thing is Genially. correct? But I don't have any activities like hands-on, like the ones that I incorporate. And just because I, I didn't want to run out of time, and I didn't want to like, okay, now you answer a question, and I wanted to make it more dynamic this way. So, but yeah, you can incorporate all the activities right there in the platform. But also, for example, I'm gonna show you here at the end. You can have a genealogy that is to, again, those refreshers, restart of the attention, right? When I know that the students I'm gonna start losing them because we've been doing a really complex activity, even for 3-4 minutes. So I go back to an activity like the ones that I'm gonna introduce here in a moment. So you can have a genealogy that is just 8 minutes, 5 minutes, just for that part of the class. You can have a Mentimeter that is for example, Mentimeter, one of the things that I like is that that you can create really competitive games. So for the end, instead of the exit ticket, I love to finish with like a competitive game when it's like, okay, who's gonna be the winner of today? So again, once we get to the Mentimeter in April, I will show you examples of that. Genially, I'm gonna show you an example here in a moment. All right, but again, hopefully I answered those questions. If not, here in
I
a
have
moment,
one more.
one more. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Do you sometimes have students who show very little interest despite the techniques you use in class, and possibly because something else is going on in their lives?
Yeah.
Would you recommend reaching out to those students individually?
Oh well, yes. I mean that is fundamental, correct? One of the things that I start introducing, or I started doing so much research about technology in the classroom, is because for me the challenge when I started working here, when I got hired at SMU, is that I went to teaching the same class twice a week to now teaching the same class but Monday through Friday. For me, it was like, wow, that's gonna be like the students are going. I have them they're with me every single day. We're gonna practice so much. But the challenge is that on Friday for my 3 p.m. class, they're ready to go party. Not to be, so for me was how do I keep them engaged? And more importantly, how, especially these SMU kids that I mean, we know our audience is they're really wealthy. They have a lot of things going on in their lives. So it's like, how do I make them the Friday before spring break that they still want to be in my 3 p.m. class? And it's by keeping activities like this one. Again, if you were not in the CT kickoff presentation, I showed them, for example, the Jeopardy, but I call it Espanol party, right? And I literally have the students coming to class because the other classmates in their groups ask them, well, you need to be here on Friday because you're our leader, right? And I do the Espanol parties throughout the semester, and therefore they know that it's not only going to be today, they're making points, and there's going to be a winner at the end. And it's like, you need to be here. And it's not me telling them, hey, don't miss class. It is that the same classmates, okay, make their other classmates responsible of being here. And that's why my classes tend to, again, I don't want like applaud myself, but they tend to be so successful, okay, with my students, and that's why they have told me. Now, of course, there's I have not had so far a case when, regardless of everything that I do, the students still not participating or not engaged. But of course, for us, or well, for me, I actually had a student this semester, as I'm starting to get into know, that actually emailed me that she was feeling really, homesick. And in that email, it was asking me about what if I miss these 2 days in like later on this month. And for me, it was not too much about what she was gonna miss. It was like, well, I can relate to you about being homesick because when I was in Mexico and I moved to Texas, like, so now instead of and reach out to that, right? I think that I'm really good to making those type of connections. But remember, SMU has so many resources like the caring community connections. I offered her to, like, you want me to put you in contact with? She said yes. She was actually not aware that there was so those type of things. Of course, if you know that you're doing everything, and you still have a student that is not engaged and that is just distracted, well, of course, reach out to them. Of course, I think that is one of the responsibilities that we have as educators, right? To see, yes, how do I make them? But of course, sometimes it goes above the classroom, and it's just they're dealing with so many problems. So, but yeah, of course, that will be something important. Now, for example, here, I'm not going to play the video because, again, I want to show, especially there's so many questions about Genially. But here, for example, the recalling of knowledge, right? I don't know if you watch The Office, but for example, here Michael Scott is trying to exactly learn in Spanish, and he's like, one of the ways that we're gonna recall it, is by memory. And like in Spanish, we always have that issue about the gender, masculine and feminine. So he's like la teléfono, and it's like na la teléfono, el teléfono. So like male and masculine, and he starts, is The Office, is Michael Scott. So he started, as you can see here, yeah, some genitalia, right? And the whole office is full of genitalia. Long story short, is that you don't want to do that in the classroom, but again, you find connections, right? You find connections that are appropriate and ad hoc for the classroom. And again, once you make those connections, I promise you, that knowledge never disappears. Now, like I was mentioning, see, again, the retrieval, see, makes those neural connections to really, take place. And at the end of the day, I have students that tell me, Mr. Lopez, I just cannot remember this, or I'm having a hard time to remember. It's not remembering only. When you remember things, that means that you learn the material, correct? If you're able to retrieve, if you're able to remember knowledge, it's because you know it. So instead of the short term, the cramming, I'm just gonna study 10 hours and I'm not gonna sleep before the exam. We're not looking for that. We're looking for this, for the spacing learning, for the long-term learning, that once you're done with my class and I see you in the halls and we go have some lunch, or in Lee Hall, you're still talking to me in Spanish, because again, you were able to connect all those dots as you were in the classroom. Now, over here, as we end this part of the workshop, if you're able to capture your audience attention, find ways that knowledge that you try to disclose to your students have a meaning to them, a personal meaning, and then they're able to retrieve that by different techniques, okay, like the Michael Scott and the gender and the numbers. See, that is why that you're gonna be successful in your classes. And again, unless there's a big problem like the one that in chat somebody, like it goes above the classroom's personal issues, students should be able to recall this information, okay, and use them in above and beyond the classroom space. Now, before I get to the questions, I want to quickly show you, for example, a presentation, or not a presentation, a game that I have that I love to do for students when I'm done, for example, with the review of a major vocab topic in preparation for our exams. So we've been doing sentences, conversation activities. So this is my exit ticket. Basically, let's see, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have an exam, and in the exam, you're gonna have to spell correctly these ideas and these terms. All right. So something that I noticed with my students is that one of the most common questions that students ask me is like, Professor Lopez, what is your favorite class? Is it us or I know that my friend is in your 11 a.m. Which one is better? And it's like, I always tell them that, I like all my classes, and I really do. I'm not even lying. Like, I do really like all my classes, okay? They have different personalities, but I do really truly enjoy all my classes, just different personalities. So what I'm starting to do is that, even though, and again, in April in Mentimeter, you will see I do have a lot of games when students compete because they love that, okay, with each other in the classroom. I started making la palabra secreta, the secret word, because to answer that question, who's my favorite class? Well, you're going to be competing between classes. And one of the things that you can do with Genially is that you can save scores, you can play with all that stuff. And again, we already talked about Genially, but I don't want to go too much in the specifics. But what we have is that students, yes, we are preparing for the exam, we're reviewing, okay? I reconnect their attention to this instead of going, okay, la fiesta, no, it's like, we're gonna start playing this game, all right? And then, because they know that they're competing and they want to be the best class that semester, correct? They're really into this game. So one of the things that I really enjoy about this is that, again, we're still in topic. We still celebración anual de un evento importante. So this is a annual celebration of an important event. So I have the whole class. I have 2 or 3 writers. I have people in the board, okay? And then the answer will be aniversario. So everybody's in the class, right? Because remember, they're competing with the other class or the previous class. So it's like, okay, aniversario. Everybody's like, okay, yeah, I think that is the answer. Did you spell it correctly? Yeah, that is aniversario. Okay, you're running out of time. See? Send. Okay, you got it. Let's go to the next one, right? Now, starts with a B, secret word. Ceremonia en la que dos personas se casan. So notice over there, everybody says you're looking, hopefully in the Zoom, okay? This is not just vocab, like, wedding means what? La boda. No, no, no. This is a whole context, right? And then the spelling. This is a complicated activity. But again, because they're so into the, and then again, they're doing everything in preparation for the exam. And then one of the main things that I see as eventually as we're in the exam is like, so this is the answer is la boda, see? Wedding. Somebody's like, I was about to forget about that one, right? But I saw la boda over there, exactamente, and I remember, okay, it's in the exam. Oh, dos personas se casan, casarse to get married, la boda from the genealogy, correct? And now this is when also I have one of the best results. Okay, one of the best results to create a family in my classes. All right, and that is when you're always gonna have some students that have a higher level than others, or they're just more outspoken. But remember, it's the whole class competing with the other classes. So, persona unida en matrimonio legalmente, sí, y starts with a C. So maybe somebody over here is like, oh, wow, I don't remember that word. And actually, the person, okay, that tends to be the most quiet, correct, is the one that remembers that one. It creates that connection, correct? And sorry, over there, we ran out of time. So it was casado, we ran out of time. That's what it's telling us that it's wrong, all right? And again, it creates those connections, that community, that family. And that is why, okay, something that should be not the most entertaining thing, like just memorizing vocab, becomes something that students on a Friday before spring break actually want to come to my classes. Correct? So here, fin legal de un matrimonio starts with a D. It would be the divorcio. See? So, etc., etc. At the end of the day, we do have we go over the scores, we go everything, and that is basically that. All right. So now I know that I have Constantine and Allison asking some questions. So we're gonna stop right here. So we have enough time to ask to go over the Q&A part of the presentation. So, Alison, I believe they're gonna give you a microphone so the people in the Zoom can, yeah.
No problem. We just had a quick question about how do you give students a code and they each log in as a team, or are they running up and using one central computer for that?
Yes, Alison. So with Genially, you can use it, or the interaction aspect.
The palabra secreta.
Yeah, the palabra secreta, any game, including palabra secreta, escape rooms, the video games that I also have. Regardless of the activity, the students can interact any way that you want. So they can connect via code when everybody in their computer are participating. The way that I do it, because I teach face-to-face classes, is that, and because they're all working as a team, is that I have one or two, three people that are actually going to write the answer. But again, I also have people in the boards with markers because the spelling is important. Or literally somebody like, no, that's not it. And then somebody brings it in a piece of paper. Spell it this way because you have an extra R or you don't have the R in there. That is the way that in my classes I do it, because it's more dynamic. They get out of the seat, exactly. But if you don't want that, if you want a more control, you tell them, bring your computer, cell phone, the cell phone also. There's a code. Again, that will be more into the technical aspect of it. It's really intuitive. You can do it offline, like meaning I can assign this palabra secreta as a homework activity if I want to. I can still see results. There's so much that you can do. But again, that is more in the technical aspect of it. But the way that I use Genially with everything, with my escape rooms, with games like La Palabra Secreta, because La Palabra Secreta takes like 5 minutes, if you notice that. Because somebody asked me, do you use the presentation, the Genially, for the whole class? It depends. If I have an escape room, right, for review for grammar, we spend like 30 minutes in the escape room because it's a really complex game escape room that the students need to figure out as they're going over the grammar or the vocab, and that game is going to take longer. This one is that exactly that is that we've been talking about vocab. I need something to again regain their attention. How do I do that? By doing something that is super low stakes, but for them is that we want to be the class that it was the best class for Professor Lopez this semester. They just take it so seriously. Yes. And then going back again, Allison, that's the reason that I present the Genially in the kickoff, and the reason I'm going to talk about Mentimeter is there's so many platforms out there. Nearpod, there's, you name it, there's so many. The ones that I have experienced and have the most success because they're more reliable, because everything that they allow you to do is Mentimeter and Genially. Now, of course, the full disclosure, I'm not a salesperson for this, accounts, this technology. I work at SMU. I like working at SMU. I'm happy to be a CT faculty affiliate now, exactly. But yes, some of these ones come with a price, right? All of these have free versions. You can do everything with the free version, by the way, okay? It's just that you limited on some of the things, how many Mentimeters, how many, but nobody needs to go and spend $50 per month in any of these accounts. You can start for free. And by the way, hopefully in the near future, there's more actually like hands-on seminars, workshops that I could lead hopefully in the future. If you actually like, okay, I'm sold in Genially and Mentimeter, now I need you to help me create some of this, okay? We're going to start in our department. I'm going to be leading that. Hopefully one day we make it to the whole university. We will see that, but it's not that complicated. Even if you feel like you're not a tech person, it is not that complicated once you do the first one. Right?
And I already shared this with the folks in Zoom. We have just-in-time teaching and technology grants at the start of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the type of technology that if you want to play around with, you could request. The CT usually, if approved, funds 1 year of the subscription. And then at least you have a proof of concept. Then if it works, go to your department chair or your school and dean and ask for them to fund, because then you actually have the data of how that worked. So usually you will receive an email right before the semester start, and very low bureaucracy way to ask for the money. And these are usually low cost items. Like usually it's like less than $100 for the advanced or pro account or something. And we usually tend to fund those. But yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Addie, for adding that. Again, use the resources that we have here at SMU. The way that I was able to use Genially is because I applied for just-in-time teaching grant. Again, they offer up to $500. The whole version for a year was $150. And there was already like a 50% discount that I didn't get because but it was actually 75. So even if you look into that, and it's not even close to $500, which is actually so if you there's again, I understand like we already as professors do so much, and now it's like, but there's ways that you don't need to spend money from your wallet. Okay, if you're interested, there's way that you can still have this type of lessons without having again to spend so much money. Yes, I have a question over here. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. There's a question from the chat asking, do you use Genially in lieu of written or Canvas quizzes and testing?
No. So for testing, because we still I teach primarily introduction to Spanish classes, so normally 1402, 1401. We have so many sections of these classes. It's our most popular class. We all have the same homework, the same assignments, the same exams that I work with. We work each other with colleagues. So therefore, that means that our exams are through Canvas, and they're still, a typical exam, correct? Now, the way that I use, for example, these games, these questions, in certain degree quizzes is just for the students to test real time in the classroom. But of course, for the grade, at the end of the day, that is the old-fashioned just Canvas quiz, because again, how many sections, and they're all coordinated classes, so we need to maintain a same standard. If I will just be doing exams via Genially while my colleagues are not doing that, then it will create a conflict in our department. Okay, exactly.
Okay. Brainstorm with me here. So I teach entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
and every project is idiosyncratic. Students have all different kinds of ideas, and there's no one right answer to get. But to engage students, what I've been doing is having them critique their peers as they present, their idea as it's forming, and their final quote, final presentation is actually a pitch. So, but along the way, there's checkpoints on presenting pieces of their presentation. So, I have figured out a way using Qualtrics to have individual, like the students rate, like evaluate the team that's presenting. So I sell it to the students that they are learning to be critical thinkers, and also it helps them understand how they can improve as they work on the project. And then, of course, the presenting team gets helpful feedback for their next round. Help me brainstorm, like, is there a better way to do this? Because right now, they input their feedback in a Qualtrics survey. I download it. I sort it by team and send it back to the team. It's not interactive. Like it's the presenting team and the class doesn't get their response immediately. Not like how Genially, or however.
Genially,
Yeah,
Mentimeter,
I don't.
exactly.
Yeah, is there a brainstorm? Could I use that to do what I'm essentially trying to do in the class with presentations?
Yes, and I think that's the whole point of this workshop, and thank you for that. Like I mentioned, the way that I started to begin all this technology was for me for the challenge of having students Monday to Friday in a class that is for many of them mandatory. How do I keep them engaged, right? But again, this class that you're teaching, correct? Is you can incorporate all this so they can get immediate feedback. Think about that instead of Qualitrix, right? You're using a Genially or a Mentimeter. Now, what we can think about is that this will be the part that we can sit down. I can take a look at exactly what you do, and then, okay, there's a presentation in Geniality that we can make to have that immediate feedback in the classroom, correct? And again, I'm not an expert of Geniality, but there's a lot of tutorials, and Mentimeter for me comes to mind. That would be a great platform, even better than Geniality for that immediate feedback, right? Because with Mentimeter, we can create exactly what you're saying. Is that there's many ways that students, or like me, the professor, I can see like immediate feedback on how they're doing, correct? So just like I can see it, I can also make that available to other students, all right? So that, as you can see, instead of being like a one rule, it becomes more to the whole class. Exactly, yeah. Exactly correct. Something that I really enjoy about, for example, not about, well, what I also love Mentimeter is because it lets you to have that expression right there immediately. So there's so much, and again, hopefully in April you can join us so you can see more examples. And then again, how a lesson, right, that you think, oh, I think it will benefit a lot from this. For example, I had after the spring kickoff, there was a presentation from one of the presenters, and the person, the faculty was, I believe, chemistry biology professor, and they were having about a really complex, this was grad students talking about vocab, but it's like I can see the escape room working as a review for that, correct? So even though it might seem like, well, that works for simple, if you go over the examples and you look at the activities, they're not simple. They're not in a fun game interactive way, but we're still doing the same thing as you will do in a normal PowerPoint. We're still having the same idea. It's not like I'm making the thing more simple for them. It's just a different way. And yes, of course, especially with that type of immediate feedback, I think Mentimeter will be a great platform for you to look into. But of course, as if if you want to, I can see some of how, like, how do you teach, and then I think this way it will be a good substitution, and maybe you can try and see how you like it.